Frank Stanishi of CFL Talk. Welcome to the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV, channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android. Just doing that for David. iOS and Android devices. While you download the app, make sure you rate, leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Now on CFL Talk, joining me is David Morasuti. Hello, David. How you doing, buddy?
Doing all right. We're into the dog days of winter now.
Yeah. I guess that'd be one way to refer to them. We're also into past Christmas, so we talked about Italian food last week. We can talk some more. We can talk Italian football. Lorenzo's coming. Just kidding. By Italian football, I don't mean. Never mind. Yeah. So what did you do this week? How was your first week of the new year?
First week, pretty much like a lot of people, just bunkered down. There's really not much to it. I mean, at this point, there's not really much you can be doing, and if you're living in Ontario, so just keeping up to date with all the things that kind of take you away from what's going on outside of the house.
Well, COVID's been a pretty big factor. I mean, I've heard people talk about it, and it's actually a very good way to describe the difference between this variant, Omicron. Um, uh, the other variants were you heard about somebody that had, corona, but with Omicron, somebody who has it. Like it's everywhere, and it's been really amazing. And I can't imagine. I'll say this from the CFL context. We were very lucky that we just got under the wire. I think. I mean, I don't think it could have been any closer under the wire, David.
I honestly think even if the game was a week ahead, we would have had a big problem.
Yeah, you mean a week later?
Yeah, a week a week ahead of what maybe we were expecting. So yeah, a week later, it would have been a big problem.
Yeah, it's been something, and yeah, I've got family that has it. Uh, wow, it's like, but it seems to be like it's been suggested that it isn't anything really bad. Um, we're looking forward to the Canadian Football League this upcoming season. Hopefully, by the new season, either herd immunity or the vaccine or the illness, the virus itself peters out, right? Because that's possible too. I can't wait till the new season starts with the hope that there's nothing affecting it, where we can just go and not concern ourselves. That would be really nice.
Yeah, I feel like for the CFL, the last thing they want is to have another year where this is becomes like part of the major conversation around everything. There will be some lingering effects that happens from the pandemic, but yeah, I really just hope that we can focus on just things that are happening on the field and really nothing else. Whether we can say that for sure, no one
remains
knows.
it remains to be seen.
It remains to be seen. But yeah, no, I'm of the I'm of the opinion that I just want things, with if you watched, sports has been the one thing that people can escape to during all this, and we hadn't been given the true opportunity for that yet,
Right.
in a lot of cases. So yeah, if you're a CFL fan, you just want this season to go without a hitch, and it's it's funny because it's going to be coming earlier than ever as well.
Absolutely.
I mean, we're talking about the first preseason game, May 23rd.
Yes.
Like that's
Is it May yet?
exactly. I mean, I know we're in January now, but you know what? Like we by April, we're gonna be because training camps. This is only 3 months really. I would say of the CFL. And we're gonna have free agency one by the time free agency and the draft stuff. The break is not going to be that long, so I think CFL fans should be quite happy that this break isn't going to be like we've come to expect with the league.
Absolutely. Um, I guess the biggest story this week, I think, would be that we're at the point now where all the Canadians that are available, who want to be available, were made available by the teams, and or looking to be signed in the next week or so, and not long, 2 weeks, there won't be many Canadians left as free agents, and we can start thinking about American free agents and, of course, the Canadian college draft.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why I think yeah, if you're Canadian right now, there's certain Canadians that yeah, they're gonna go to the open market to try to maximize on their value, and they have every right to do so. But if you're a Canadian that's looking to stick with the team for next season, a specific team that you played for last year, you're gonna want to hope to get a deal done relatively soon, considering yes, we've been seeing a lot of signings, especially not just Canadian players, but star players. And I have to say, overwhelmingly on the defensive side of the ball. Once again, we are seeing teams are prioritizing, hey, we got to
Wins
get
championships. It wins
we got
championships, just doesn't sell tickets. I know defensive players won't like hearing that from me, but it's an old adage, and I think it rings true.
I, I I hate to bring the league down south into this, but if you watch that Sunday night football game, you watch that game for the excitement and the chaos of it, but because of the offensive side, not because of the defensive play. That's all I'm going to say about that. But yeah, I am we are seeing that trend right now. I mean, Willie Jefferson, Jackson Jeffcoat, like those are very important players, and Jake Thomas I should bring up as well, Canadian. I think he's actually the longest reigning Canadian on the Blue Bombers, if I'm not mistaken. He's been there the longest. But it's clear that a lot of teams want to make sure if they've got a really good defensive player, Canadian or not, they want to make sure that guy is in and ready to go. And it's funny because I constantly hear coaches say it's harder to get the offensive players up to speed on offense than it is on defense. And I always think of like, then why aren't you doing whatever you can to make sure you're keeping the guys on offense? Like Calgary, by bringing back Reggie Bagleton, and I guess we'll talk about Will Levi Mitchell as well and what's going on there. But there, I think Calgary's taking it the other way around and saying, we want to make sure that we can do some things on offense.
They well, let's stay with the Canadian content, and I want to discuss something else too. Now, the Riders released Braden Lenius. It's a Regina kid, Canadian kid,
That's big.
to go and try in the NFL to see what NFL opportunities present themselves. This is something that happens every year. What do you think of this Canadians? A Canadian going down there's an extra layer of conversation that we can have. But Canadian Football League players that go and try out in the NFL, and you and I both know that every year it's unusual if more than one or two stick and actually start.
I look at the age too. I mean, Lenius is 25, so like this, he hasn't really hit the true prime of his career. It's just kind of starting off right now. Um, he has the size to be an NFL player because there's really two things NFL teams look for. They either look for that small, speedy guy,
Mm-hmm.
or they look for that big sized receiver. And if you look at all the Canadian receivers that are in the NFL right now, a lot of them fit the mold of the bigger, the bigger size frame. Maybe it's just a coincidence.
That's no, it's not a coincidence. I think that's just the way it is, and I think it's even in the Canadian Football League. But when I say it's in the Canadian Football League, we still have the smallish players like a Braid, Brandon Banks. You still see them. Lucky Whitehead. You
Mhm.
still see them. They're available, but there's some big receivers that you need in the Canadian Football League to go for those contested balls, right?
Yep.
The reach radius that they have. You need it. That's not different as far as football. It's football, right? You got to have different kinds of bodies to do different kinds of things. It happens with receivers. It happens with running backs. It happens with quarterbacks. You get your running back low center of gravity. You get your big bull. You get your quarterback that's big and strong and can throw far, has great legs, can run like heck, has a big arm, tall, so they can throw over the offensive line. So there's no pre-requirement for size in football. It just you have to find your place. So Braden Lenny is going to the NFL. The reason I wanted to talk about him, uh,
Sure.
if you're Saskatchewan, right, you're sending a Regina kid to go play in the NFL. For me, all I hear is an upside because that kid wants to play in Regina. I don't know of a single kid that's from Saskatchewan that doesn't want to play for the Rough Riders. I don't know a single person in Saskatchewan that doesn't want to play for the Rough Riders. so, so I guess what I'm trying to say is they're sending him there, knowing that, in my opinion, this is just my opinion. I don't mean to sound like I'm in their heads or anything, but my logic tells me send him there, see what he can learn, and he'll come back a better receiver.
Yeah, and I think that's something people tend to forget in that yes, you're losing a really good Canadian product to the NFL, but he's going to go play in the best league, get all that experience even if he's not playing all the time or if he's not a star. It's just going to make him better, and a lot of these guys end up coming back anyways cuz they Canadian teams will take them. We know how valuable, Canadian teams are really seeing the value of grabbing those really good Canadians. And so yeah, I mean, and it looks good on the CFL when you've developed a receiver or you've developed a Canadian. Like we see, and we talked about this I think last week. A lot of offensive linemen have gone down to the NFL, but it means so much more when it's a receiver, when it's even a defensive back or a linebacker. I mean, look at Alex Singleton,
Or a
uh,
quarterback. Yeah, look at Alex Singleton, captain
right,
of
of
he's
the
the
Eagles.
captain of the defense, one of
Well,
the
he's
captains of the defense.
one of he's playing a permanent prominent spot. You hear the name recognition, you hear them, and then let's say Lenius gets a touchdown. They're gonna talk about where he came from. He came from Canada. He came from Regina. That's big. That's free marketing for
Well, it's
your.
it's also something that makes the local folks in Saskatchewan very proud.
Oh yeah, especially you know, and you said now the Saskatchewan born kid can say, "Hey, I want to go and play for the Rough Riders," and hey, you never know, maybe that leads me to the NFL, a new
Yeah,
path. Maybe
yeah, and when he's playing, when he goes down there and he tries out. Now there's there's a couple of things that happen when a player goes down to the NFL, a CFL player. If you're a quarterback, you don't really get many reps, right?
yeah,
You hope to get them, you probably don't. If you're a running back, same thing. You may not get many reps. The chances to get serious attention and serious opportunities not there. Receiver, same thing. But I'm saying that's at the worst case scenario. They don't really get a chance to understand and see and learn, right? But even if they don't, they get to go down and see what the other players are like. They get to see how good a cut they make on a route. They get to see how those really great players up close do their thing. There's a lot more to glean, a lot more to learn if you're in camp as opposed to watching on TV. That's not to suggest that you don't see how great players are on television, but it's that work ethic. That's the thing that you end up with a target. I think Lenius will go down there and he'll see how good he is today compared to the ones that he goes down there to see. When he comes back to Saskatchewan, he's going to come back a better player, a better receiver. So I think that's an opportunity for Saskatchewan to let him go down there. I think knowing that he'll come back and play for. I just can't believe he'd want to play anywhere else. That's all I'm saying. And but there's an upside for Saskatchewan sending him down.
Yeah, I mean, and look, we've heard of stories where teams are reluctant to release a player. I think it means something different when it's a player that you've drafted and developed, and then they want to go down. Versus, we've heard stories of NFL players who had these, wink wink agreements with the GM. Hey, I'll come up, play my best for you for a year, and hey, if a team calls, you mind releasing me to go back down? I think it's such a different situation. Sure, does it suck that Saskatchewan loses a player like Lenius? Yes. Does it mean better things for them down the road? It could very well. And it's and also, how many Saskatchewan fans are now going to root for Lenius to succeed, right?
Yeah.
Hey, maybe, if I mean, we know how well Saskatchewan fans travel, maybe they'll take the trip down to Georgia or somewhere closer and watch him play. Like, that's, you
Is
know,
that, is he with Atlanta? Did he go to
yeah,
Atlanta to try out?
yeah,
Okay,
he's with the Falcons.
that's too bad. There's something else we can talk about here, and in association with what you just said. There's Minnesota, and I'm trying to remember. Is it Denver, Minnesota? Two NFL teams got rights to the Canadian teams in Canada. Buffalo naturally has their Toronto connection, and of course Seattle has their natural connection to Vancouver. So, there's an opportunity for Canadian kids to play and get the attention and or the promotion. If they go to a team that's from their hometown or from Canada, they're going to get promoted that way, because the NFL now has come to the realization that Canadian players, should say Canadian fans, are important to them. And if Canadian fans are important to them, I think you'll find that the Canadian players are just as important to them in promoting the games in the NFL. Now, we're not here to promote the NFL and the Canadian Football League and the Canadian Football League show, but we're football first, and I happen to think, and I apologize to you, David, and everybody else who thinks that if I don't talk strictly about the Canadian Football League, I'm being a traitor. I'm sorry, that's not my intent. My intent is to talk about football and how we can grow the game here, and we have to be aware of how we can do that. And sometimes the most important thing is, rather than fight this kind of stuff, is somehow roll with it. You know what I'm saying? It's something that the Canadian Football League should, I don't say help the NFL with, but I think it's important that the Canadian Football League, follow those players, Canadian ones especially, that are playing in the NFL, and also the players that have had success here.
I also think there's, I think, maybe one thing soccer does right, in that if a player's under contract or if a player's available, and a team, let's say, I'll use Toronto FC as an example. Richard Lorea he's a Canadian defender. Uh, his dream was to always go and play in Europe. He is now joining Nottingham Forest, I believe that's the club name, and TFC gets something for him, right? They get some money back for him, because this is a player that was under their contract, under their development, so they're not losing him for nothing. I think maybe if you're the CFL, maybe that's something you may want to work with the NFL. A kind of, I wouldn't call it a development agreement, but maybe just a player transfer agreement where, you know what, we will release the players out of their contracts, but give us a little something in return, because you're technically taking away talent from one league to another. Yes, you're getting a little bit of a prop up by having a CFL player join the NFL. Um, in the recognition there. But we're talking about ways that the CFL can make money. Why shouldn't teams profit off of a player that they've drafted and developed, have under contract? I think that's the crucial part. A player that they've drafted and developed in their system, and now they're losing them. I mean, they're
Well,
allowing them
they
to
do it.
go.
They do it with junior hockey.
Yeah, we,
It's
you
not
know,
it's not peculiar to soccer. They do it in junior hockey. Yeah, I don't think. Well, I don't know. I don't think the Canadian Football League pays Canadian universities for the players they draft. I don't think so. Is it something that maybe it should happen? Probably. But if when you talk about money, um, I'm really not sure there's at this time there's an avenue there. But I just wonder, to your point, to the point you're trying to make is and I understand what you're trying to say too. I'll take it a step further and suggest that if you reward the organizations that develop the most and best players, you enhance that organization financially. That makes it there's a little bit of a drive there, right? A motivation. And if there's a possibility that you can offset some of your costs because you're creating or developing talent, maybe that becomes a way of Canadian universities to think, hey, maybe I'll do it this way, and we'll try a little harder because it's worth it. It probably would be helpful. It's something that I though David, I don't know how I would start if I'd have to be a passenger on this one. How do you think it would look? How would it work? How can you know? I mean, other than the fact, yeah, you draft a player, you get this money. Okay, great. But how do you talk both parties into doing something like that? Can the universities take the money? All these silly questions come up. But I like the idea. It's just an idea.
Here, I think maybe, and the other thing to be clear here, I think maybe it shouldn't go directly to the universities. Maybe the leagues, maybe it's up to U Sports and the CFL and the NFL to come to those agreements where there's a partnership, there's an exchange, and the money goes into developing grassroots. In that regard, I think you know you have to do your best to ensure that you are investing in your product, right?
Yeah.
I think many would. I mean, we don't see it as much. We don't hear about it as much of what the leagues are doing to really. I mean, we've see. I think I see it a lot in the NFL where we talk about all the different programs they sponsor, and in the CFL we see some of that too. But I think we really need to start to see it more, especially now where so many kids have been out of sport. So many kids haven't been playing sports, especially football, that you need to start developing it. A perfect person that we could talk about this is Ben Grant, because that's what he does. He does a lot of coaching for youth football, and I guarantee his big thing would be is equipment cost, because you got to get the safety standards change, and it's so expensive. So you have to do your best to not only ensure that you have a pipeline, but that pipeline has the means to continue.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't doubt that there's a will,
Mhm.
David, to do something like that. I just don't think there's the way.
Well, yeah,
I
exactly.
just don't think there's the way. The money, for those of you that are listening on the radio, there's a will, but is there the way? And money isn't something that is everywhere in the Canadian Football League and in Canadian football. We're grateful that universities and colleges have football as part of their programs, and especially some of the really good and really successful colleges. Thank goodness for them and the football that they put together, and the ones that try too. I know we talk about the same. It's the same in the US too. Look, SEC is fighting tonight for a championship, two teams from the SEC. And I think they've been involved in the championship. At least one SEC team in the past 10 years or something has been involved in every championship. So that's probably not true, but it's close. The point being that there are teams within organizations, within leagues that dominate because they know how to do it. The point I want to make is that they're important, but so are the other teams in the league, because the good teams, they get all the attention, all the accolades, all the awards, all the wonderful talk. But you know what? There are teams that have to be the opposition. Everybody, the Harlem Globetrotters were great, but without the Washington Generals, they're not so good. They need the Washington Generals. So, it's great that we have these organizations that maybe don't have it as well put together. It's important. So I guess what I'm saying is the whole league is important. The Canadian football, maybe you're right. Maybe if there was a way to convince the Canadian Football League or the NFL, if they don't do it now, to spend some money on, college university football, and that in the NFL as well, the NFL and the Canadian Football League. They'll need
Yeah,
it now because money's short. You're right.
all I'll say to put a bow on this is, you look at the product of NCAA. There are a lot of people who prefer watching NCAA football over NFL football, because you look at it, the game, they all seem like they're playing like almost like professionals, because the broadcast is professional, the equipment, the stadiums,
The
everything about
betting,
it.
the
There's no,
betting.
right. They're playing right now. They're playing a national championship game in an NFL stadium. Like,
Yep.
everything about it screams like there's
Pro.
right,
Yep.
professional
Speaks
about it.
pro and money,
Yes. When you
right?
put in the investment, you get it back by the quality of the product. So this is all I'll say is, for a lot of people who say, you sports, it's not really like, they're not really, it's not to the same caliber. I said, well, no kidding. Unless they're actually being given the same investment as what a professional team is getting, you're not going to get a professional quality product. And the only ones who do get a professional quality product are the ones that get the investment and have the resources to put it together. So that's all I'll say about that.
Yeah, yeah. No, I hear you, and I gotta say, um, I'm waiting for an answer, hoping to get a guest for next week. Um, yeah. So I guess that was a nice bow. We'll leave that as the bow. I'll tell you what, that's the bow. Um, the BC Lions signed Lucky Whitehead. Um, that is a big signing for them. You know, he had a really good season, and his numbers might not be telling the truth because he played injured for the last few games. A great player, a great talent, a, another version of Brandon Banks, if I can say that.
Yeah, there's a reason why, the Lucky Whiteheads and those guys all end up being the stars of the league, because they when they get the football in their hands, they're like, oh, you're like, oh, here we go. Like, something's gonna happen here. You see them darting down the field, and the football's thrown down the field to them. You're like, oh, there's a good chance this is getting caught. Like, you're almost at the edge of your seat when you watch them play. That's the quality that they bring to the league. So, I think, yeah, that for BC, not only was that an important sign for them on the field, but also I think off the field too. This is someone that adores the CFL. We saw him at the Blue Bombers game for the West Final against Saskatchewan in Winnipeg, sitting with the fans watching the game. I know some BC fans weren't too happy that he was looked like he was all decked out as a Blue Bombers fan, but it just goes to show that this is someone who's embraced being up here in this league, even though he played down in the States, right? But he realizes he's now a star in this league, and he can take advantage of that, visibility to being that type of star. And it'll be it'll be good to see him healthy, and it's also good that he's here for not just 1 year, but for 2 years.
Absolutely. Edmonton, Chris Jones. Is there anything else we can talk about since last week?
Well, our Nick Arbuckle seemed to have gone a little bit of it's not a guarantee, but to him it was a sign, a little showing of faith, and saying, "I think they gave him a $100,000 signing bonus or
Yep.
something."
Yep. That's what they
Like
did.
that's them saying, "You know what?
They
We're
took
going to give you
40
that."
grand. They took 40 grand off his salary,
Yes, and converted
right?
into a signing bonus. So we talked about this last week, was whether he was going to get a fair shake in Edmonton, and I think if you're Nick Arbuckle, you're happy that you're getting that, because he hadn't really gotten it from Ottawa. That's why he left Ottawa. Toronto tried to give it to him. It didn't work. So I think right now, yeah, I think that if you're Chris Jones, you have nothing to lose by having Arbuckle there. Even if you bring in another quarterback to compete with him, you've at least told Nick Arbuckle, we're going to give you this a fair shake. you're going to get your chance. And so
He
I think
needs a quarterback that can give him a good look at the rest of the team. You know,
yes.
you need a good quarterback so that you can see what you have in the offense. Your running back, your receiver. You know, I'm not saying that. Oh, just as long as he can throw. No, the better he plays, the better Chris Jones can judge the rest of the offensive team.
And maybe this is also Edmonton saying we're going to run. We're not going to try to blow things up too much. I mean, look, Arbuckle's staying. Cornelius looks like I believe he's sticking around too. It looks like he's under contract as well. I'm just trying to check their list here. I don't think he's a free agent. No, he's not a free agent. So maybe this is and look, I maybe Edmonton's not trying to do the quick fix either. They want to see if maybe one of these two guys can develop into something because the work's already been put for them, right? They've already tried to they got to be given a fair chance also because I think Edmonton set them up to fail last year too.
Well, it is what it is. So what has to happen is, if I'll have the last word on this one, for Edmonton, they need their quarterback to be a good pro quarterback, and if he can do that, you know, Chris Jones, we know he knows how to put a team together, and he knows what a defense is really well. So if he can depend on his quarterback, that'll be half his battle. So we'll see how that works out. Looking over at Calgary, you wanted to talk a little bit about Bo Levi Mitchell, same kind of situation as Arbuckle, renegotiate his contract. Again, there aren't many options at quarterback. You know, right now you've got a couple that are out there. The two from Hamilton, right? You got the two from Hamilton. You got Bethel Thompson. He's out there. Vernon Adams has gone back to Montreal. Trevor
Mm-hmm.
Harris is out there. You also have the decision to make, and Calgary made the decision that the other teams have to make. Are they going to spend the kind of money that Trevor Harris wants, or maybe a Bethel Thompson might expect? Or do you find somebody with some experience that you can get for a prettier penny, right? The Calgary Stampeders decided they want to keep Bo Levi Mitchell, and they signed him. And I don't think they signed him to trade him. I think they signed him to keep him.
I think so too. He was set to earn close to $500,000 going into 2022, according to Danny Austin. Like that's a lot of money, right? And so there's only a way to make it work. You take some of that off the salary, put it to a salary bonus or something like that. So I think it's about 40,000 that they're saving, which that might not seem like a lot, but in when money's tight, when you have two quarter, I mean, and also
No,
helps that
that's a
Jake.
player.
Yeah, I also think
Become a
that
player.
Jake Mayer is only making about $186,000, which that's not a lot,
Well, it's not a lot, but when you add it to what the other guy's
yeah,
making, that's
right,
the cap is busy at your
right.
quarterback position.
So they found a way to kind of finagle a little bit to make the money work a bit, and really, if you're Calgary, you have Bo Levi Mitchell there. You have the safety net of Jake Mayer. You've got Reggie Bagleton back.
Yeah,
That
talk about him. Here's a guy who keeps getting better every year, and this is a guy that they're going to rely on.
oh
They,
yeah, they're
they
gonna
just
have to,
signed him.
right?
They just signed him, right? So
Um, the thing I'm wondering about with Calgary is can they bring back Kadeem Carey? This is someone that
big
I,
play guy.
I think he was their most important offensive player last year, just because of what he was able to provide.
Some key wins. He carried them literally and figuratively.
What does this mean for Kamar Jordan, who I believe is also another important player for them? You know, how many guys can you convince to take a certain amount to stay, right? And that's going to be the big thing for Calgary.
Big
They've,
challenge.
they've had a hard time keeping guys around. So I think some stability with Bo Levi Mitchell, Jake Mayer, Reggie Bagleton, that's a good start. But what does that mean for the rest of your offense? Because that team got gutted going into last season.
Yeah, well, I guess they're hoping that they have a better jump onto what they need. They got a late start last year and played really well. They were one of the more improved teams as the season wore on. I think the only team that improved more than Calgary, it was Hamilton. And that's saying a lot. Hamilton made it to the Grey Cup, so that's a heck of an improvement, right? To go from, you know, being terrible and losing those first few games to making it to the Grey Cup. I'll make that the last word with Calgary, and here's the first word on Saskatchewan. They lock up sack leader AC Leonard. Again, a defensive player, but this guy's a monster. He's a beast. They need him, and he is really one of, if not the main cog in the Saskatchewan defense.
Yeah, he's one of those rare players that is so versatile, where he can be a pass rusher. He can drop back into coverage. He's and that defense suffers some big injuries going into the year, right? So he had to pick up the slack a little bit for them. But yeah, I think he's arguably a top. I'll go top 5 defensive player in the league, and I think that's an important part of that Saskatchewan defense to keep around.
Absolutely. I guess the final word on Saskatchewan is we talked about Braden Lenius,
Mhm.
um, and he's gone down to the NFL to give it a shot. Winnipeg, the two Jays get signed. The two big guys, Jefferson and Jeffcoat, two very good. You want to talk about dominant defensive linemen? I don't know of two on one team that are as good as these two.
Yeah, I that's you talk about what makes Winnipeg such a tough team to play against. It's like they've got a good defense all around, but it starts with those two. They they're so hard to block. They're so hard to contain. They give the quarterback only so much time to throw the ball, and
They're
then the
so hard to
quarterback,
deny.
right?
You can't
Um,
deny them.
but we also talked about how much of their team they need to sign. They have so many players. Pretty much the entire team needs to be brought back. And
Well, it all gets yeah, go ahead. It amazes me that they can re-sign all these players that won the Grey Cup. It's amazing.
I think it was Jeff Coat that says, "But don't think I'm going to be recruiting a bunch of guys either," which I kind of found a little interesting. I'm like, well, don't you want to go for three? Go 3 for 3. Um, you know, I I think I think Jefferson is at the point of his career where he'll take less to stay if it means the situation's right and he gets to keep winning. Um, I don't know if that's the same for Jeff Coat. But I mean, hey, Winnipeg just lost actually a member of their defense too. DeAndre Alford.
Well,
He's
that's a big loss.
he was nabbed by the NFL, also by the Falcons. Um, 24. He's 24. Like those are the tough ones to lose. The young
And
emerging
a good
players.
one for the NFL to pick up.
Oh yeah, yeah, I think so. Um, this is the time where I think but at the same time, I hate to say it's good that they lost him now because they know what they need to figure out going into free agency and try to find a replacement elsewhere. But yeah, I think Winnipeg definitely wants to make sure that the key cogs of their defense are kept around. So Jeff Coat, Jefferson. If I'm looking here at their free agent list, you want to bring back Adam Bighill. Ooh, like they got so many players, but this is if you're Winnipeg, you've seen them go through this before, and they've been able to find a way, and you've seen them also find creative ways to recruit players. So it'll be
Yeah.
interesting to see who makes the cut and who doesn't.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to say the least. Yeah, so well, Winnipeg is what it is. Hamilton, great announcement a couple of weeks ago, and things have been a little quiet on their front. They've got two quarterbacks that are out that you can get. Evans wants to see what it's like free agency, new ownership group. So I'm sure a lot of the stuff they're doing right now, they're probably having a big meeting, and in the past week since they did it, to sort of get everybody on the same page. Don't you think, David? Because everybody's going to be involved, right? These aren't passengers. These people they're bringing on are going to be drivers of this organization, much like the caretaker. Um, you know,
And
Mr.
let's not
Young.
and let's not forget that they're dealing. There's the new management structure.
Yep.
With Steiner taking a bigger role, with Ed Hervey coming in, like they all it take some of them. It's good that they did it now because it gives them time to go through their game plan. Um, I think like Dane Evans, he should have no problem finding a home. Whether I think Hamilton, I think he would be their pick to bring back, if I'm going to be honest,
Mm-hmm.
because I think a certain quarterback that we have known to uh, not be vaccinated won't be given the same um,
Latitude.
latitude. Thank you. That was the word I was looking for. He won't be given the same latitude, and I think a lot of teams will pass on that. We've heard a lot of GMs kind of echo that sentiment that they don't want to have to deal with that as an issue. So I think Dane Evans. I mean, you just said it, Frank. There are not many quarterbacks out there, and there's how many teams right now looking for quarterbacks?
Argos.
Argos, Red Blacks, potentially Edmonton.
Montreal, if you don't think the one is enough.
I would consider Montreal set, but we never know because Dan Evans is going to want starter money. How many
Right.
teams can give him starter money? So that's why I think Edmonton. That's why I think Toronto. Hamilton, Ottawa. Really, there's not really. Who knows what happens with Caleros
Where
and
does Mazzoli go? Who takes Mazzoli? That's the question I have, because
I
Mazzoli's
think
going to expect a lot of money, right? And
I
he,
think first and foremost, teams are going to ask, "Are you getting vaccinated?" If he doesn't plan to get vaccinated, I don't know if we're going to see him.
let's say he does get vaccinated,
Let's say he is in the
all things being
CFL.
equal. Who's going to take him, and for a price that he probably will ask? I don't think so,
No,
because he hasn't had any luck. All right, I'm going to call it luck, because we know he has ability. We know he can be a great quarterback, but it's the old "what have you done for me lately?" Right? That's the issue. And in the Canadian Football League, when you're paying Bo Levi Mitchell money, Michael Riley money, Trevor Harris money, when you're paying that kind of money to a quarterback, you're crippling your cap. It's a fact. We've heard every year that these players get a lot of money, and we can hear the noise about, now what do we do? We need to get some talented players to play with these great quarterbacks, right? So it's a delicate balance. It's a balancing act.
and if you're Hamilton, you've gone through how many disappointing finishes. Like maybe you want a fresh start.
God, you can't even say that Evans is a change and he'll bring them there, because
Yeah,
he was there both years, both these seasons that they lost to Winnipeg. He had
exactly.
his hands on football.
And and really, if they felt like they were the ones, like if even if let's say, I mean this year there was close. It could have gone either way. So maybe they
Of
think
course it could.
it very much could have.
You're totally right.
But yeah, like if you're Hamilton, you probably may want to do a reboot in some cases. There will be teams. There will be teams needing a quarterback, but yeah, I think you're totally right. I think if the expectation versus the reality, that's going to be the biggest battle for a lot of these quarterbacks.
And don't forget. Now you got Coach O and President O, and what Coach O wants and what President O want may not be the same thing. They may not be the same thing. You know, I know he's only one person. I know he's a deep thinker. He's a great, I got nothing but the utmost respect for him. But being the president is one thing, being the coach is another. Just like being the coach is one thing, being the GM is another. You know, there's a whole different perspective when it comes to players when you're a GM compared to a coach. So I wish him all the luck in the world. You know, great man. Um, Great stuff for Hamilton. They've got a great organization, and they're going to be tough to beat in the East every year, at least as far as I can see the foreseeable future. In the foreseeable future, the team that makes you and I scratch our head because we spend our time sitting in the press box watching the Toronto Argonauts play. This year was a good year, especially when one considers the previous 2 years. We've sat there, you know, if you say that you know this past season compared to the previous two was a really good year, but still a lot of questions are raised now because of the off season and because now they don't have a quarterback signed. You know, they have a weakness. You know, they had a team that finished first, that beat the eventual participant in the Grey Cup, the Eastern representative. They beat them 4 out of 6 times. No, 4 out of 5 times. I think it was, wasn't it this year?
I was trying to count that. It
Three out of,
was
or 3 out of 4.
I think it
I
was
think they played five.
3 out of 4 because
3 out of 4.
Thanksgiving
Yeah,
it was
yeah, three
two
out of
in
four. I'm counting.
Toronto, one in
Yeah,
Hamilton, lost, and then they lost the one in Hamilton.
yeah. I was counting the exhibition game too.
Right, 3 out of 5 if you count the playoff game.
Yeah,
That's what it was.
exactly. So anyway, the point I was trying to make is that when it when you know when the money was on the table, you know when the whole season was on the line, they could not punch the ball into the end zone, and we have to ask the question why. You and I have to ask the question why. We've asked the question why. The Toronto Argonauts are going to have to answer that question, and the way they lost that game, you know, was one that their defense did what it needed to do. Their offense didn't.
Yeah. It's funny because the big news for the Argos this week was bringing in the
Coordinates.
Chris Jones replacement, who was who was the other coordinator's replacement. So now I think the thing is they always want to get the coaching staff sorted out, right? So Dinwiddie gets his defensive coordinator, someone he knows, someone he's worked with. So I find that doesn't surprise me. Once I heard the name out there, I said, okay, I can see where that makes sense. Um, Now he still has more work to do to add another. Now he has to find a quarterback coach. I think he has to find an offensive line coach. Like there's work to be done there. I think once that's done, I think the Argos know what they need to do. I think the Argos know they're going to need a quarterback. Question is, Antonio Pipkin is still around. So does that mean he gets? I mean, Frank, we've talked about it. Does he get more of a chance, or does that mean he's going to, you know, it's tough because does that mean they're going to look for a 1A, 1B option? Because we know finances are tight. They try to bring in, they try to shore up the Canadian depth, so they try to have as many options there, which means you make sacrifices at other positions.
Absolutely.
Um, it wouldn't surprise me if McLeod Bethel Thompson's back because I think Dinwiddie would like that continuity to be there. I'm looking at their list of Canadians. Like if I'm them, the biggest one for them is Henoch Mwamba. I think both on and off the field, he was such a vital player for them. I've talked to some people. They say Dex they would like to see if Dexter McCoyle comes back. Cordero Law. Like there's a lot of they got a lot of work to do on both sides of the ball. They do have a
They
lot
sure
of their
do.
starters back. They were like if you look at who isn't a free agent, but again, the Argos quarterback situation will remain their biggest talking point.
Yep.
Um,
We're gonna have to leave it there and
yeah.
move on to the Red Blacks so we can get
Oh, yeah.
all 9 teams in. Okay,
Go
David.
right ahead.
The Ottawa Red Blacks sign offensive lineman Canadian Jacob Ruby. We talked about Canadians, and this is you know, they have made it very clear. Their organization has taken out their megaphone and said, "Canadian players, you need Canadian players."
Like I'm talking right now, if I'm Toronto, I'm a little worried that some of those Canadian players from Ontario might look at Ottawa because Ottawa is it could be an attractive place. They seem when you see the moves that they've made in their front office to get that strong leadership group there, it's a little easier to sell it with free agents. So again, Ottawa, the same. I think Ottawa and Toronto are very similar in that they both have that same question with the quarterback situation. Can they figure it? Can they both figure it out? There's only so many quarterbacks around, and yeah, there's a lot of Canadian players that Ottawa has as free agents. So I think you might see some flip flopping between those two teams
Yeah,
potentially.
I can't disagree. The most important thing that I can say is, with new management, under new management, um, the Red Blacks the past couple of years have appeared to do very little from the upper management perspective. I think this year, um, the CFL is a great league. It's a great the Canadian Football League. Football is a great sport in Canada because change is something you expect. So you can't rest on your hands and go, well, let's have a look and see what, you don't have that luxury in the Canadian Football League. You always got to be ready to make changes. In fact, you've got to fill your roster. There's really literally a rotation in your lineup, something that you and I complain about a lot, but you have to be able to deal with it. It has to happen, and the only way to find the good players is to have a good rotation that brings you players for you to see, and then the challenge is to hang on to them.
That's always the biggest challenge, right? And if you're Montreal, you got William Stanback back, but there's other guys you got to get Jake Winicky, and they've made some, they get their quarterback. You know,
And their quarterback coach Anthony Calvillo is back with the Alouettes, I think, for the third time.
I was so surprised to see that because it's funny how many times he was in Toronto and he was in Montreal. Like it flip flops. Great to see Anthony Calvillo back in the CFL. I think we can always agree on that. I think Vernon Adams will benefit from learning under him.
I think he
But
knows
yeah,
the
there's
Canadian
so
game.
many teams that have so. This is the one thing about CFL free agency. There's so many question marks for every team because there's so many guys that they have to sign. It's gonna be such a cluster. But yeah, I think the Eastern teams, the East, I think is wide open. I think every team feels like there's an opportunity there. So it will be interesting to see how those all play out.
It'll be interesting to see how Adams, and Calvillo work together.
Yeah.
And in listening to Calvillo, he's basically saying, and well, the term he used was you have to coach through the quarterback's eyes. But it's not only that, you have to coach through the quarterback's arm, his brain, and to the receivers that are out there. So bringing Stanback back, and also they brought back oh my goodness, now I'm having a brain cramp. Lewis, they brought Lewis
Yes,
back,
Eugene Lewis.
so
Yeah.
he's back, and that's an important. If you're going to look through the quarterback's eyes, that's the guy you want to see downfield. One of the big guys you want to see downfield.
I also think, I mean, Calvillo has some experience with working with the GM as well. I think
Yes,
that's an important factor
they
as
have a
well.
history.
So they know how they each other work and what they're
Yeah,
looking for.
Danny Machocha, they have a history.
So we'll see how that works for
They
them.
definitely do. Well, David, this was fun.
Always fun.
Another off season and lots to talk about.
Yeah, very much so.
Thanks, David.
Thank you, Frank.
For David Morisuti, I'm Candid Frank Stanishi. Thank you for watching CFL Talk. Aaron live Mondays at 9 p.m. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network. CFL Talk, news, entertainment, and other sports programming we offer. Please check out SpanglishWorld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'm Candid Frank. We'll see you next time.